Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Raphael Cohen-Almagor. And in this episode, we'll discuss his book, Confronting the Internet's Dark Side, Moral and Social Responsibility on the Free Highway. Welcome to the show once again, Raphael.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. And I'm sure not just in India, but this book will be very useful for a lot of people across the globe itself. And we'll talk about all that. But before that, Raphael, if you can tell a bit about you itself so that audience knows all. It's not just about you being author of one book, you are author of several books, also a lot of things that you do, so that quickly the audience can know who they are listening
to. Well, my name is Raphael Cohen-Almagor. I'm professor, chair in politics at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom. This year, I am a fellow at the Institute for Advanced Studies at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I am director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Hull. Presently, I'm writing my 20th book, which is about resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Again, another very timely and very pressing topic. And I've been working on this book since 2013, so that's my largest book ever. But today we are going to focus on another large book that took me some 9 years of my life, which is Confronting the Internet Dark Side.
Absolutely, Raphael. So you see that the book is there on the screen, as you can see, and it's for the audience also, they can see this particular book. So Raphael, tell us a bit about this book now, Confronting the Internet's Dark Side. Means you wrote the book some time back. If I understand, it was published in 2015 and this is 2025. But this book seems to be much more relevant than the times that it was written in. So tell us a bit about the book itself, what this book is all about, and then how do you see it much more relevant today?
You're right. The book is very, very relevant, and the thesis is still very, very relevant. And all that I've done in the book is still very relevant. There might be newer case studies, but essentially we are talking about the same problem that repeat themselves time and time again. Let me explain what's brought about this book. So I've written a number of books on tolerance and freedom of expression. And in 2006, my fourth book in this series, which is called The Scope of Tolerance, was published. And I gave a seminar about the book. And one of the participants in the seminar, the audience, said that much of my thesis and much of my arguments in the scope of tolerance are less relevant nowadays. We're talking about 2006 because of the introduction of the internet. And this comment baffled me because I thought that whatever I argued in the scope of tolerance is also relevant for the internet. So we're talking about the same lady with a different dress, but we are not talking about a totally different lady. And soon thereafter, I decided that my next big book is going to be about the internet. And it's going to be about social responsibility on the internet. You see, I started to collect information about for the book in 2006, but of course, I need time to write it. And the opportunity presented itself later in 2007 when I was a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. So I'm sitting at the heart of Washington. Around me is the American government, all the offices. I'm sitting in Pennsylvania Avenue, really the heart of Washington, and all the think tank around me. And of course, you know that the major player on the internet still nowadays are American. And they have offices also in Washington. And I'm at Woodrow Wilson, and that's a policy center. So they're interested in policy making. And I was thinking, how can I reach the American people? What can I do in order to try to promote them to thinking, new thinking about the internet? Because the internet, no doubt, contains the best products of humanity, but unfortunately, it also contains the worst products of humanity. So, what do you do with the worst products of humanity? How do you tackle this? And then I came up with the idea to say the following: freedom of expression is extremely important. Take away freedom of expression, democracy is going to die. You can't have democracy without freedom of speech. However, freedom of speech has to come with certain responsibilities. You can't have freedom unlimited, because if you're going to have unlimited freedom, this is a recipe for anarchy. So against freedom of expression, I'm putting no less important value, which is social responsibility. And this was, Confronting the Internet Dark Side, was the very first book that balanced between freedom of expression on the one hand and social responsibility on the other. And in building this book, I'm speaking about the responsibility of all the stakeholders. First of all, we as users of the internet, people who put material on the internet, like you and me, whenever we introduce some information into the internet, we have to do this with a sense of social responsibility. So we have to be responsible for the content. We are not going to put content that can be harmful. Secondly, there are the responsibility of the readers. You surf the internet, you read some troubling information. What do you do with this information? Do you keep it to yourself, or you tell someone about this information? And if you decide to tell someone about this information, whom do you approach? Are you approaching the police? Are you approaching an NGO? Are you approaching the government? Whom do you tell? Thirdly, and this is for me the crux of the matter, there are the gatekeepers, the internet service providers, ISPs. What are the responsibility of the gatekeepers, of the internet service providers, those that enable us to put information on the internet? What responsibility do they have? And I dedicated 2 chapters to their responsibilities, because I think that they more or less dictate the present and the future of the internet. And then I'm talking about the state responsibility and the responsibilities of the international community at large. And I'm saying that in order to tackle the problematic aspects of the internet, we have to have responsibility of all the stakeholders, because if we won't, then we won't be able to succeed. Now, there are many troubling topics on the internet, vast amount of information that I, for one, find it very, very troubling. However, I'm one person, I'm working very hard, but I need to sleep sometimes. There are only 24 hours in a day, and only 7 days a week. So I have to pick and choose. So I ask myself, what are the most troubling aspects of information that I find in the internet? What really gives me the creeps? What really make me angry when I see that? And after debating with myself, I decided to focus the book on 3 topics that really aggravate me. And I said to myself that whatever I'm going to say about the responsibilities vis-a-vis to these topics, then ipso facto is going to be applicable to the less serious topics, because I'm tackling the more serious topics. So what are the most serious topics for me on the internet that I found troubling? The first is terrorism, and I'm very much against terrorism. I think that what we need to resolve our differences is through debate, through education, through discussion, through deliberation, but not via violence, because the only thing that violence breeds is more violence. It's not going to help the cause, and it's just going to generate more suffering. So I'm very much against terrorism. Unfortunately, when I did my research for the book, there was a lot of terrorist material on the internet. And I'm not talking about the deep black holes of the internet. I'm talking about conventional internet. YouTube. YouTube was immersed with terrorism. There are many, many websites on terrorism, and many of the terrorist organizations had valid websites that were considered to be legitimate to be on the internet. And that baffled me, and I decided to speak about that. And this is one aspect of the book. Second issue that troubles me a great deal is child pornography. Because, children cannot be said to voluntarily engage in sexual activities. Whenever children are engaged, when you see children engage in sexual activities, they were coerced to do that by the definition that these are children. And it is our responsibility, especially in liberal democracies, to protect third parties when they are vulnerable. And I cannot think of more vulnerable than children. So children pornography troubles me a great deal. I have to say that with regard to children pornography, the behavior, the conduct of the ISPs, of the internet service providers, was far better than the conduct and their approach to terrorism. That means that you will need to work very, very hard to find real images of child pornography on the internet, but still you can find them. And I argue that the internet service providers and the state and the international community doesn't do enough to protect us against child pornography. A third issue that troubles me a great deal is racism and hate speech. So this was the third topic that I decided to focus my attention on. And then I said I started to write the book in 2006. I finished in 2015. In 2010, an issue that was on the periphery of my radar as a scholar started to gain prominence. I'm talking about 2010, and it gained more and more prominence as I proceeded with the research, and it became very, very big. And unfortunately, it's still very, very big, and this is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying meaning that you use the internet in order to victimize vulnerable people. Usually, kids and adolescents. Most of the victims are between the ages of 11 to 22. So these are young people who are still not sure about the role in the world. Their sexual identity is being built. They are willing to take risks. Young people are taking more risks than adults. And they're ashamed to share experiences with adults because they think that they're adults themselves and they can do that, they can cope with that. Of course, they cannot. And when they become victimized in school and with the help of the internet, also after school, then there's no refuge for them. You see, before the age of the internet, there was bullying. There will always been bullying. I know from my own experience in the primary school and also high school, there was a bully or two bullies in my schools. You needed to avoid them and you needed to protect yourself against them, and if you have the ability, also to protect others against them. So bullying is a very old phenomenon. The thing is that after school, when you went home, if you were a victim, you had a reprieve. You had time to cope. You had time to be with your family, be with your friends, and so on. But now it's 24/7. You cannot escape this, and you cannot say, well, you can close the phone or you can close the computer. That's impossible because people, especially young people, are very curious and they are eager to know what are their mates, their friends think about them. So they need to go to the internet because they're intrigued. And then they suffer. And they suffer and they suffer and suffer to the extent that some of them decide to take their own lives. So we are talking about very young individuals who had a very long future ahead of them, and that future was cut as a result of cyberbullying. And my heart cries about each and every incident. And unfortunately, every 2 weeks, every month, I hear about another victim of cyberbullying who cannot withstand the pressure and took their own lives. And this is a shame because the ISPs, the internet service providers, with the technology they have, could have prevented this if only they wanted. I think that cyberbullying is no less important than, say, copyright, because try to violate copyrights on the internet and see what happens. Within minutes, the material is going to be taken out because they're afraid of their reputation that someone is going to sue them. However, we are talking about human life. This is no less important than money. And then cyberbullying still exists. And that troubles me a great deal. So I added a fourth issue to the book in which I speak about these four topics: how all the stakeholders of the internet should treat terrorism, child pornography, racism, hate speech, and cyberbullying. This is the book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Raphael, this is the book. Now, you've talked about four topics. One is terrorism, child pornography, racism, and hate speech. And then you added cyber bullying. That was almost 10 years back. You must have provided some solutions. What were those solutions that you provided in the book?
Well, I believe there should be cooperation between all stakeholders. So I'm speaking, I'm pleading to the internet users to act responsibly when they put material on the internet, to think about the consequences of their action. So if we're talking about, say again, cyberbullying, and you are 16 years old and you victimize a person in your class, please think before you do that. Please think about the consequences of the action, because that person whom you victimize might consider to take their own lives because they feel ashamed and they are embarrassed and they think they have nobody to talk to. Of course they do, but they are trapped. They can approach their parents, they can approach their other friends and so on. But sometimes people are reluctant to do that. And that's just one example. So the user. Secondly, as a reader of the internet, you see something that is most troubling. You see cyberbullying, you see terrorism on the internet. You see vile hate speech against minorities, or against homosexuals, or against women, or against Muslims, or against Jews, or against Indians. Do something about it. Complain. You have ability to complain, because usually it's a violation of their own standards, of their own rules and regulations of the internet service providers. Complain to them. If it's not enough, I mean, if you're talking about terrorism and child pornography, these are illegal. Complain to the government, complain to the police. And then I'm really pleading to the ISPs. You can do that. You have the technology to do that. Why don't you? You're shooting yourself in the leg by not doing this. You know, I was totally baffled when I was doing my research, and my book is full with examples of terrorism. We're talking about American ISPs who are providing a platform, who have provided a platform for terrorism to attack America. This is insane. Absolutely insane. Why do you do that? So there's a lot of pleading to the ISPs, and then more pleading to the state and international community. In the international community, we have multiple conventions on human rights that oblige those signatories. Why don't you do more in order to ensure that the internet is free of terrorism and child pornography? Why do you still find this on the internet? It should be totally out. One thing that I suggest in the book is to have another browser I'm a liberal, so I'm very much against coercion. But an alternative browser that you can choose, nobody forces you to choose, but you can choose. I call this browser CleanNet, and it is working on the principles of deliberative democracy. What do I mean by this? I mean that there will be a billionaire, like the opposite of Elon Musk, but with similar amount of money, but in very total views on free speech. A person who thinks that free speech should be balanced against social responsibility. So this anti-Musk with same amount of money decide to convene a group of experts from all liberal democracies. I suggest about 400 of those that include experts of the internet, experts on free speech, experts in ethics and social responsibility, experts on security, leaders of NGOs, leaders of security organization and free speech organization. Take them together and task them to think about issues that they think should not be presented on the internet. And then they're going to consider all the issues. They might come to the same conclusion that I came, that the most troubling issues are child pornography, terrorism, racism, and cyberbullying, but they may choose otherwise, whatever they decide. But then they're going to say, okay, now that we have a decision to do that, we are going to take the most capable people, the tech-wise people, and we are going to task them to devise a new browser, CleanNet. And on this CleanNet, these topics that we decided should not be on the internet, you won't be able to find. We are going to filter them. And this is, of course, an ongoing process. We are going to continue filtering these topics, what we have decided. And then we're going to sell this browser. We're going to give it for free. We're talking about billionaire. They can do whatever they want with money. We're going to give this for free for people to use, and with the assurance that the topics that we decided upon are not going to be present on the internet. So I, as a parent, when I am instructing my son or my daughter, I said, please use CleanNet, and then I'm sure that my daughter will not be able to tackle any form of child pornography, any form of terrorism, any form of cyberbullying, any form of hate speech and racism, for instance, or any other topic that we decide. It can be others. So, I speak also in the book about sites that promote suicide. That for me, it's an absolute no. But whatever topics they decide. And then we are going to approach the government and say, listen, my dear government, do you really think that when pupils go to school, primary school, secondary school, high school, that they need to be exposed to child pornography or terrorism or cyberbullying or hate speech? If not, then please instruct your ministries of education to suggest CleanNet as the main browsers for the schools. So this will become the standard browser in school. And then we are going to promote this also via the media. And we are going to ask businesses, listen, do you really think that your employee, when they do the work about promoting agriculture, promoting economy, working in certain office that advances technology for security, do they really need to be versed and approached by terrorists or hate speech or pornographers or cyberbullying? Do you really need this in your businesses? Or do you think that it's a waste of their time that you pay? So we can approach businesses to follow suit as well. And then, little by little, we can advance this CleanNet to be the main browser on the internet, to be more popular than any other browser, Chrome or edge or any other that you may have. Also, we can tell the government when you are promoting certain issues, say, I don't know, rights of elderly people, and you convene um, uh, press or you do a press release, your first point should be CleanNet. Invite them first. And by this, you are going to promote social responsibility on the internet. So this is the way that I see this. I would like to see the internet that is free of certain topics that trouble me a great deal. And whatever troubles me, I assume also trouble millions of other people around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely, Raphael. But you see, it might trouble you, it might trouble me, but when such things become big business for some few people who also control the internet of present, what do you do about it?
Well, I said I'm not against. I will not advocate coercion. I can't do that. But what I can say to governments, if internet service providers who have code of conduct and they don't enforce their own code of conduct, then there is a problem. So the government should engage with these mega companies, with Microsoft and X and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these mega companies, and tell them, listen, in your code of practice, in your code of conduct, you've written that you are against violence. How come that you allow cyberbullying on your servers? Do better. I mean, to say something without enforcing it is utterly meaningless. It's hypocrisy. So is the vision that you want me as Minister of Education, as Minister of Internal Security, as Minister of Defense? Is this the image that you are selling me? That's something that you would like me to think about you? Because if you're a hypocrite, then there are ways to deal with hypocrites. We can sue you. We can harm in your pocket. You see, the issue of privacy, for instance. You probably heard that Prince Harry took leading presses in Britain to the courts. He is able to do that because he has the money. He is very rich. What they've done was wrong. They invaded his privacy against his consent. They tapped into his phone without him knowing. They listened to his conversation. That's absolute no-no. So if some people, I'm saying, we need money, and I don't want the government, that's why I say that it has to be the contrary person to Elon Musk. I don't want the government involved in CleanNet. But so for this, I need a very rich person who is going to assemble this. He's very rich. He can do whatever he wants. He can play any game. He can play that game as well. When it comes to serious issues where the ISPs are violating their own code of practice and they are using Chrome or they're using Firefox or any other browser, then the government should step in and say, listen, you are not abiding your own code of conduct. And therefore, we have to take some means to tackle this. We can't be passive about these issues because we are losing life. We are losing life to terrorism. We are losing life to hate speech because there is a correlation between hate speech and terrorism. You've seen the mega events that took place as a result of hate speech and incitement that began to translate it into very large terrorist events. You've seen this, and we are losing life each and every year, hundreds of people due to cyberbullying. This has to be stopped.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, do you think, Raphael, the internet has become darker with the coming on with AI? Means earlier it was just use of words, but now you can manipulate the pictures. So many things are happening nowadays. Are you looking at updating your book and tackling about these whole issues?
Well, in the book I did not, of course, there was no AI when I wrote the book. It was 2015. It's a further complication that we have. So now, those who want to abuse, it is easier for them to do that. However, it's a two-way street. AI is open to abuse. It is also open to use. So, it's a rat race. It's like, you develop a certain weapon, and then the same weapon can be the counter weapon of the same weapon. So AI as such, I'm always saying, technology is not a problem. I don't want to go back to the age before the internet. God forbid, no. The internet is an asset. It's a valuable tool. I cannot think of my life today without the internet. We wouldn't be able to hold this conversation without the internet.
Absolutely.
No, the internet is extremely important, and I don't look back. Technology as such is not a problem. The people who abuse technology are the problem. The people who abuse AI are the problem. AI can be put for very good uses. I'm telling my students, there's one thing to want to sharpen your argument, to refine your argument, and you don't know how to do that, you may use AI. I have no issue with that, as long as that the language is yours, the content is yours, the thinking is yours. You use AI only to refine your own language. You don't speak Oxford English, or
Right.
you have difficulties because you have some sort of mental challenges or educational challenges or whatever. You need help. AI can help you. But dare you to present to me an essay that is totally, absolutely written by AI. This is fraud. This is plagiarism. This should not be allowed. Technology is never the problem. Abuse of technology by people is the problem.
Absolutely, absolutely, Raphael. There is much to understand about this. One thing I want to understand for the audience is, what are the challenges that you faced when you wrote this book? Any particular challenges that you remember?
I like to base my argumentation on primary sources. So, what can be primary sources when you're talking about the internet? My primary source for this book was interview, the method of interview. I went and talked to people. And because I was based in Washington, D.C., at the heart of, if you like, the world, and we are talking about the most sophisticated security organizations, we are talking about the most advanced human rights activists and organizations. We are talking about stakeholders of the internet. We are talking about NGOs that have to do with the protection of children. I was able to access many, many people. For instance, I interviewed the assistant director of the FBI on terrorism. I also was able to interview the assistant director of the FBI on cybercrime. These were assets. I interviewed the FBI officer who was in charge of the investigation of 9/11. You know that 9/11 was concocted through the internet. All the communication was done through the internet because the terrorists were based in Hamburg, they were based in Europe. And then they had to send some people to the United States to train and so on. So a lot of these things, a lot of the planning was done via the internet. The internet is an asset for kosher, for good businesses, and also for terrible businesses like terrorism. So I was able to interview that officer as well. I interviewed directors of human rights organizations, and so on and so on. My greatest challenge was talking to directors of policy of mega internet companies. So I spoke with the director of policy on Facebook, and I had a feeling that we are talking parallel lines. We are not meeting. There was hardly any meeting place between us. I tried to persuade him of the necessity of applying standards of social responsibility, and he continuously talked to me about absolute freedom of expression. This was very frustrating experience. And the same applied when I talked to other directors of internet companies. They protect themselves and they just want, and I'm saying this with great sadness, they are abiding by the buck, by the dollar. They are there to make money, and my argumentation is an obstacle because this would necessitate them to invest a lot of money in monitoring their own business. And they can do that. I mean, as I said, technology is always advancing. They can protect their own businesses from being abused by terrorists or by child pornography or by racists or cyberbullies. They can do that. It's just a matter of priorities. As they can do this when it comes to copyright issues. And I said, many of them are now doing very good work in tackling child pornography. Great work in child pornography. I think that child pornography is extremely important. It's one of the 4 major topics of my book, but it's no less important than tackling racism, hate speech, terrorism, and cyberbullying. All of them extremely important. Or promotion of suicide, unfortunately, by certain websites. I think these are important topics. They can do that. They should do that. And if they don't do that, we should hurt them by the same means that is important to them. Hurt them in their pocket because we are losing life.
Absolutely. So, what is the key message, insight that you want readers of this book to take away from?
The key message is that freedom of expression is vital to our existence. Take away freedom of expression, you take away one of our major rights and liberty. To the extent that democracy would die. You can't have democracy without freedom of expression. However, freedom of expression is not a recipe for anarchy. It should be balanced against social responsibility. This is the message. You have to make some sort of balancing because you're balancing between 2 values that are extremely important, equally important. I cannot put one above the other. They're equally important. And we, as human beings, we have the capacity to know bad from good, to know evil from good. And we have to make a choice. We can't say that everything is legitimate because it is not. And at the end of the day, if you're not making this kind of balancing, you're going to make a lot of harm. And it might come to your own door. You need to pay the price. It can be your own daughter. It can be your own son. So act responsibly.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to learn from you about all these things from your book, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to know more about you, also about the other 20 books that you have written and still continue to write. So where can one get this book? Which is the best place for them to get hold of this book, and also how do they connect you? What's the best way to connect with you?
You can get the book via Amazon. It's there. And I'm sure that the best booksellers will be able to find the book and my other books and so on. And to Google me via the internet and via the assets of the internet that provide you'll be able to find me quite easily. I'm not an obscure person on the internet.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.